Good morning. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. After a week off, I'm ready to get back at the morning devotionals, and I hope that you are as well. We are going to finish up our series on Who Am I this week, but we're looking at a couple of two-parters. So this morning is part one of what we're discussing about being my own worst enemy. You know, back in the mid-90s, prosecutor Christopher Darden had the unenviable task of trying to convince a 12-member jury that a public icon was guilty of double murder. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. O.J. Simpson was one of the most popular, most recognizable athletes in America. He was beloved. He belonged in that upper echelon reserved for only the most revered athletes and personalities. He was larger than life. Some people would not believe it no matter how much evidence was presented. Simpson was so loved that some couldn't or wouldn't see his faults. Some would never believe that he was capable of committing such a heinous crime. So to that end, Mr. Darden made this statement to the jury. He said, "It is not the actor who is on trial here today, ladies and gentlemen. It is not that public face. It is his other face." What a chilling phrase. His other face. The face of a batterer, a beater, an abuser, a controller, the face that is hidden from the general public. That's what Christopher Darden was trying to expose. The face that almost no one else sees. That phrase hits home with me. I don't know about you. Whether we'd like to admit it or not, many of us know all about that other face. Many times people have come up to me and they have said some very nice things. They say, they compliment me in grand fashion, or they say things like, you're such a good guy, or you do such a good job. And I think to myself, if you only knew. I've had letters written to me, emails sent to me, messages posted on Facebook telling me what a wonderful preacher I am. And while I'm humbled and appreciative, I can't help but think, if you only knew. You see, people's perception of me is often based on what they see and hear from the pulpit or on our television program. An opinion is formed. Little do they know that I have another face. I wish I didn't. I try not to. But the fact remains that I have a temper. I think things that I shouldn't. I say things I shouldn't say. I do things I shouldn't do. And I absolutely hate that about myself. All too often, I am what I despise. So I can totally relate to the words of Paul when he wrote, "For I do not understand my own actions. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin who dwells in me." Many years ago, a London newspaper encouraged the public to write in and give their answer to this question: what is wrong with the world? And writer, philosopher, and theologian G.K. Chesterton submitted his response. To the question, what is wrong with the world, he simply wrote, I am. You ever feel like you're your own worst enemy? Do you keep getting in your own way? Can you relate to the words of Paul that we just read? He said, "For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out." You've heard it said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, our worst enemy sometimes is as close as it gets. Under our skin, feeling with our feelings, taking over our minds, and threatening to sabotage our spiritual livelihood. Many of us are double agents, innocently disguised as someone who wishes the best for ourselves but betrays our own self at every turn. But here's the thing about enemies. An enemy is intolerant. By definition, an enemy wants to destroy his opponent. Now, typically, there is a hatred of the other side. The enemy despises what you stand for. He may have a hatred for your beliefs. He most likely feels that you are a threat or that you have something that he wants. My guess is most of you don't have a problem coming up with something about yourself that you dislike. In fact, do this sometime at your home. Think of something about yourself that you abhor. It'll probably only take you 10 seconds or less. Then find a reflective surface. Your worst enemy is staring back at you. But you can't exactly retreat from yourself. So what do? Well, as a general rule, what you resist will persist. What you recognize and accept can be changed. So accept what it is about yourself that you dislike and seek to change it. Secondly, an enemy promotes propaganda. Every warring army needs a propaganda department. Using cruel and dehumanizing language helps in the fight against the enemy. Also, the spread of propaganda persuades people to buy into the common enemy. So what kind of language do you use on yourself? What sort of hate speech do you speak about yourself? I'm such an idiot, or I'm such a failure, I'm not good enough. Sound familiar? How about letting the voice of God be the loudest in your life? How about letting Him define you? He's your ally, and with Him you can defeat the enemy. An enemy also exploits your weakness. Your opponent will attack you where you're most vulnerable. Whatever your weakness is, you will tend to exploit it. You tend to focus on the things about yourself that don't measure up in your mind. Do you dwell on your shortcomings? Do you worry about what everyone else thinks? Do you strive to live up to some unreasonable standard? You know, there's this thing called the 20-40-60 rule, and it goes like this. At age 20, you were sure that everyone was thinking about you. By the time you turned 40, you started to care less that people were thinking about you. And when you hit 60, you realize that no one was ever thinking about you. You know, as a general rule, people are too busy being their own worst enemy to even notice your shortcomings. And finally, I would say this, an enemy never forgives. You know, we tend to replay our worst moments on an endless loop in high def. Only your sworn enemy has that kind of time. There's a reason the rearview mirror is much smaller than the windshield. Don't spend all your time looking back. Learn from the past, but don't live in it. Don't sabotage the present and the future by letting the past haunt you. Now, did you notice that Paul wasn't speaking in the past tense? He wasn't talking as if the battle with his sinful nature was in the past before he became a Christian. No, he's speaking in the present tense. The civil war that rages within him was something that continued even after he became a child of God. And we can certainly understand this. We know all about the struggle and how the struggle doesn't get easier just because we got baptized. We know the good we should be doing, yet we find it so difficult to do it. We know the wrong we should be avoiding. We know the opportunities that have been missed. And because of this, the guilt, the shame, the regret, the hurt, the disappointment, it creates this vicious cycle within us. The more wrong I do, the less valuable I feel. The less valuable I feel, the less reason I have to stop doing wrong. The more I do wrong, the more worthless I feel. And since I'm worthless, it really doesn't matter what I do, and therefore I'll just do more wrong. And around we go until one day we come to the realization that we are stuck. We're like hamsters running on a wheel. What started out as so pleasant has turned into a desperate situation. We want to flee, but we've been running on the wheel for so long, we don't really know how to escape. And what's the one piece of advice that so many folks are quick to offer when it comes to breaking the cycle? Well, you just need to exercise more self-control. And to a degree, they're right. Many of us know what self-control is because of our lack of it. We speak before we think, we have a short fuse, we eat too much, we shop too much, we give in to all sorts of cravings and impulses because we can't seem to say no to ourselves. I mean, we all know about self-control, mostly because of our lack of it at times. And yet, our knowledge and our life experience doesn't seem to make it easier for us. We still find ourselves trapped on the hamster wheel. It's like the woman who joined a diet club for support. She had made her family's favorite cake over the weekend and reported to the group that half of it was eaten at dinner. The next day she said that she kept staring at the other half until finally she cut a thin slice for herself. One slice led to another, and before long the whole cake was gone. The woman went on to tell how upset she was at her lack of self-control and how she knew her husband would be disappointed. Another person in her group asked her what her husband said when he found out, and the woman smiled and said, "Oh, he never found out. I made another cake and I ate half of it." You know, some would assess that situation and say, you know what? You just need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and start doing right. You got to be mentally tough. You just need to get some willpower and grit your teeth and show some determination. And sometimes that is the recipe for success. Some people do need a swift kick in the pants. But that's not what we're talking about. And that's not what we'll be talking about tomorrow. I hope you'll tune in as we finish our discussion on how we overcome being our own worst enemy. What does self-control look like? How do I even control the self? Well, as we're going to see tomorrow, self-control is not about yourself at all. In fact, it's about giving up control. So I hope you'll tune in. Before we leave, let's have a prayer. Dear God, thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for not giving up on us. May we not give up on us. God, give us strength, and may we tap into that strength to keep pushing forward, to keep moving ahead, overcoming the guilt and the shame and the hurt and the disappointment that we feel in ourselves. God, may you be the loudest voice in our lives, and may we always seek your will. It's in your Son's precious name we pray. Amen. I hope you have a great day. I thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.